Hello and welcome to episode 125 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, EV sales are set to take off in the United States, and there's not a damn thing Joe Manchin can do about it.
The oil industry may have developed a rather large war chest to fight climate action. Okay, let me check the figures here. All right. They've only made $3 billion a day every day for the last 50 years. So nothing to worry about.
The UK is going ahead with a new nuclear reactor. The cost at least twice of what Boris Johnson's COVID Barty budget is.
A large U.S. offshore wind farm project has hit a snag. They've discovered unexploded munitions. Wait, maybe that's what the oil industry has been spending their money on.
All that and more on this summer edition of the Clean Energy Show. How are you this week, Brian?
James, what's that?
How are you, sir?
I'm good. First of all, I want to address the timeline, the continuity of the timeline here. You're going on vacation, so we're recording the show a week in the past.
Yes, this is from the past. So if anything big has happened and we're not talking about it, it's because my feet are up at the cottage looking at a lake, and I need a week off every year. So this is, a double show and putting a second one out a week later on. But, it's going to be hot, too. The forecast keeps changing. I wanted cool weather for my cottage, and now every time I look at the forecast, it's hotter and hotter until the point that I'll be dead again. Everybody needs a vacation, people, even us, the Clean Energy Show, but we're going to continue putting out that content for you.
Yeah, well, as I recall, the first time you went to the lake at our cottage, you nearly killed yourself on your bicycle.
Oh, God, Brian, I still have the scars.
The next year, you nearly died from heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
So this sounds like a fantastic vacation plan you've got.
Well, maybe it's going to be UFOs this year. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll be careful. Thank gosh I was wearing my helmet, too, last year.
So I have an update on my Electrify Everything project, which is here in my house. We've been trying to get rid of natural gas. So we've sort of decided on the next step in the process, which is insulating the ceiling. So in our house, half the roof is a vaulted ceiling with no attic, and then half the roof has an attic. So there's kind of two different sections. The whole house, I feel, was probably designed in California because it's a fantastic house and we really love it. But it's this low slope ranch bungalow, this mid-century modern bungalow. It just feels like it was designed in California because the roof has just not worked over the years. We've had leaks almost every year that we've lived in the house. In the summer, in the winter, we've got condensation, we've got leaks. I think the problem right now is actually, I think, the footings from the solar panels. So we have solar on our roof that was put in 5 years ago. And I think that either the footings were not done quite right, or maybe the wind came along and blew the panels and maybe pulled them up a little bit or something. So right now, the ceiling in our kitchen has been completely torn away. We took down the drywall, and we've noticed at least 4 different leaks in the ceiling. So probably that's from the solar panels. So
is that vaulted?
Yeah, this is the vaulted part of the ceiling. And so what we've decided to do is remove all the drywall in the vaulted part of the ceiling. So this is about half the house. And we're going to spray foam all of that. A bunch of our house is spray foamed. We want to upgrade all the insulation, basically, eventually, so that the house is more energy efficient. I hate waste, as we discussed last week. So the more insulation you can put in the house, the better. But we've been doing it kind of piecemeal over the years. Never had the budget to kind of just spray foam the whole house. If I could go back in time, I think I would do that. Buy the house, ripped out all the drywall, spray foam everything, and start again. Here in the bomb shelter, this is actually the first place that we spray foamed in the house, here in my 1962 fallout shelter in the basement. One of the first things we did was spray foam and put up drywall and finish this and turn it into a bit of a studio. So that's the plan. We're going to kind of do it, the roof, in 2 phases, because we realized to do both halves of the house, it's just too much for 1 year. And tradespeople are booked. They're busy. We're worried that our ceiling is going to be opened up by the time we hit winter, and that would be no good. So that's the current plan. We're going to rip down all the drywall in the vaulted half of the ceiling, spray foam it, and re-drywall. So that's going to be our summer project.
This is not a good news story, Brian. Solar on roof adds to leaking. That's not good.
Yeah, and I will emphasize that it's a low slope roof, which is definitely part of the problem. The lower the slope, the just more frequent you're going to have leaks. It's even like we've got asphalt shingles, which is kind of the standard around here. And there's some thinking that says you shouldn't even use asphalt shingles on a roof that's this low of slope. Like it's just asphalt shingles are meant for a steeper rake than that. So, this is it's a huge project and a problem. And yeah, it's hard to know. Like I say, maybe the footings were not quite installed right. Like when you put solar panels on your roof, I've always kind of wondered how they do it because, you don't like to poke a hole in a roof. Like that can cause a leak. But presumably there's a way that you do it with the footings where it doesn't cause a problem. So either they were not installed quite right, the low slope doesn't help, and then, we've had huge windy days. Maybe the wind has kind of pulled the panels up a bit and kind of ruined the footings or something. We're not really sure, but spray foam, drywall, and then somebody to remove the panels and kind of check on the footings. That's our next phase of the project.
Well, that'll be interesting to follow. I'll be following closely.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated, and we'll hopefully do the whole roof in phase 2.
So here in a cold part of Canada, what we do, we have attics. And in some parts of the southern states, they have nothing in their attics, right? Even in Texas, when it got cold, it's like you learn that people don't have any insulation because, they don't really need it. But we have a lot of insulation because most of your home's heat goes through your ceiling, through your roof.
Yeah.
It goes up. So that's where you need the most insulation as far as the thickness of it. So we can add, several feet of it if we want to. I mean, it's diminishing returns after a while, but it's, probably 20 to 30 inches could be done and give you a really, depending on what you're using. Now, with your vaulted ceilings, you don't have that attic. You only have how much? Do you have like a 2x4 worth or
it's
larger?
Like, I think it's a 2x10 beam, so I think it's 10 inches.
Okay, so that's pretty significant. Do you know the R value that you can get with spray foam at that depth?
Not off the top of my head, but
that's the best bang for the buck for that situation, though, right?
Yeah, and the spray foam should help with the leaks, although ideally you don't want it leaking at all. Like, again, hopefully we fix, with caulking or something where the footing is.
Are the leaks coming from where the beams are, the boards? Because that's where the solar panels will be installed into.
It's I don't know. It's hard to say.
Okay. Yeah, it is. It's tricky unless you're an expert that, because the water follows gravity and you got to have forensic skills to determine where it comes from sometimes. And it can be very, very tricky. Okay. So I live close to a refinery, and I talked about 4 years ago, a group of journalists contacted me that are doing this large investigative thing on refinery pollution and stuff like that. And there was different people who contacted me. There's newspaper reporters, there's TV reporters, there's independent people, there's journalism students working on it. It's a big group of people. And I just wanted to say that they finalized my paragraph in the book that one of the journalists is writing about this. But I'm surprised at how long it took to finalize one paragraph. Like everything was wrong. I had to go back and forth. My name was spelled wrong. She misinterpreted, and I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying the process of credit to her for making sure it was right, because she made damn sure it was right, even though it's one paragraph and everything. That's why, they send it to you to make sure that it's right. So it was implied that I moved to the neighborhood I moved to because I wanted the wide open spaces. That's not true.
Yeah.
I knew from having friends here in high school, shout out to the Karchewski twins. I used to come here in high school and visit them. And then the refinery was much smaller, but it was way stinkier because they had less pollution controls. And it was just hideous. It was like being in a sulfur vat or something. It was like it just hit you terribly. And I said, I'm never going to live here. But then what I was doing, I was trying to live down on the other end of the city where you live, and I was trying to find a crappy house that faced south because I wanted a passive solar house. I was going to convert it into a passive solar house. But what I did accidentally is I expanded my search to the whole city, and I actually found a passive solar house, one that I could actually afford. And so I jumped on it, and I did some renovating here. I could use some more, but very happy to live here. And we took advantage of the open spaces because we are next to a pipeline that has a wide open field, and we've cross-country skied, we've flown kites, we've played baseball, there's a soccer field. We've made the most of it when the kids are growing up, and we love it. And it's just nice not to look back at other people's houses, too. It's a nice view.
And James's house is kind of related to a very famous house called the Saskatchewan House, and there's a Wikipedia page about it. But the whole idea of passive solar houses kind of started here in our city with the idea of a super insulated house that they built in the 70s called the Saskatchewan House. James's house was built kind of based on that design. It was like a research project. And then the whole passive house movement, which really then kind of took off in Germany, they used the research from here as a kind of a starting point.
Yeah, and the idea of passive goes back, generations.
Sure.
People would use, stone and things like that would absorb the heat, and they would face south and stuff. But yeah, I think that the people who built my house based on that kind of ran out of money because the insulation in the attic is bad and had to be upgraded. It needs to be upgraded. But yeah, it's interesting, and it didn't take off. It was during the energy crisis in the 70s. Did you know that heat recovery ventilators, the air exchangers that bring in fresh air, which is maybe not a good idea here, actually that recovers the heat as it's exchanged, was developed in that house. So it's something that is used worldwide now. Was developed in this modest house that was a research project. And you can still go look at the house, which is fascinating to look at.
Yeah.
So she says I said the refinery was 2.5 kilometers away. She pointed out that it's 1.6 as the crow flies. And believe me, there's crows around here. I tried to run over one the other day. Because
you shouldn't have pissed off the crows.
I'm at war with the crows, Brian. You know that. They know that. They're going to remember next year. Yeah, but there's just a lot of misunderstanding over one paragraph, and now that is straight. So, Brian, Tesla is starting to expand their dry lithium cathode production. This is something that is different than wet because the dry part of the battery is supposed to be cheaper and better. And this is something we've been following because they bought this company that had developed this, and we were thinking, oh, it's going to be huge, but it turned out eventually, after years, it's not that huge. But the 4680 factory in Fremont, California, is the prototype factory for these, and it's surpassed 1 million cells of production so far. But they're building another factory, and also Giga Berlin will be making these kinds of batteries. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, Tesla announced a lot of kind of new technologies at their Battery Day, which was a couple of years ago. And really the whole perspective from Tesla is it's all about scale. Like, none of this makes sense if you can't scale it up to massive, massive, massive production, because we have to replace the entire oil-based energy and storage industry, and we're going to do that with batteries. So Tesla was kind of looking at the way this was done previously, and there was this wet electrode making process, which everybody used, but it takes up way more space and it takes way more time. So Tesla was looking for a way to kind of speed up this process to be able to make more batteries in a smaller amount of factory space. So they came up with the dry electrode process, which has turned out to be very difficult to achieve. So it sounds like they have, I guess, partially achieved it. I'm not sure.
I wake up, and I'm not exaggerating here, it seems like I wake up every morning to news of a new gigafactory for batteries.
Oh, yeah. We can't keep track of them. We've sort of stopped, reporting on them because there's too many.
It's pointless now. It's just incredible how much battery production is going online, or is gotten off the ground. So, yeah, it's quite incredible. I really look forward to watching prices come down and battery improvements take off.
Yeah, of course, one of the promises of the EV era is that, the prices are supposed to drop, but just because of what's happened in the world lately with supply chains, the price of EVs has been creeping up, unfortunately, when it was supposed to be coming down. But, that day is coming. Costs will drop.
Okay, let's get on.
Okay, so there's a report here from The Guardian, and it's a little depressing. We've kind of reported on, figures like this before, but I don't know. I thought this was worth mentioning again because it was kind of another way of kind of stating these figures of really how much the oil industry has earned over the years. And it turns out it's a lot. The oil industry has made roughly $3 billion a day in profits every single day for the last 50 years. So,
and are they ever whiny little B words? They...
You'd think they'd be happy with all the money that they've made. So in terms of a total amount for the last 50 years, that's $52 trillion in profit.
Staggering, Brian, staggering.
So it's no surprise, really, that they're trying to obfuscate the facts surrounding this. This is extremely similar to the tobacco industry, who suppressed information about cigarettes causing cancer. The oil industry obviously has known about climate change for decades, but with profits of $3 billion a day. And so I think they can see, the end is near, but unfortunately it's not anytime soon. Like, this is going to continue for another couple of decades, that they're going to continue to make $3 billion a day. And I guess, all the oil executives, everybody in play, they're probably around our age, so they're, for the rest of their lives, they're going to continue to make this $3 billion a day. So they don't particularly care, I think, about the end game. But, those numbers were just kind of staggering. So I thought it was worth mentioning.
I was just watching some of the 3-part documentary series on big oil, how they've, created all this BS in the world and have fought back. There's a 3-part series that's on Frontline on PBS that aired April, I think. And it's actually on YouTube. I think an individual put it on YouTube, so I was watching it. And it's also part of a BBC project called Big Oil v. the World. And that just came out on BBC now. So everybody in Britain is talking about that. All the climate people in Britain, I think, it's a big deal, this documentary, and that it's really, showing the true colors of oil.
Well, and as your experience with this book project points out, like, this kind of like research and production and documentary making and journalism, like, is extremely difficult and time consuming. This, they interviewed you for that book project and that journalism 4 years ago, and it's taken that long for all of that work to kind of come to fruition. But when you want it to be comprehensive, when you want it to be accurate, this is difficult stuff. It takes a long time.
Yeah. Brian, you've had lots of stories from Power Magazine over the day. You don't mind if I start reading it too?
Yeah, this is a website I found. I mean, I assume it's a physical magazine as well, but I read the stories on the website, and they have some excellent reporting there.
So I decided to follow it, and I came up with a story that I thought was interesting, or that I'm interested in. It is that the UK is throwing support behind Sizewell C nuclear power plant construction. Something they've been debating whether to go ahead with this. It's 2 nuclear reactors, and the costs of building the new plant show the price tag could balloon to as high as $52.4 billion, which is, I'm not an economist, but that seems like a lot of money.
Well, that's a few days' profit for the oil industry right there.
Right there. So EDF has said it expects Sizewell C will take 10 to 12 years to buid. And
that's
what's going to happen in 10 to 12 years? Wind, solar batteries, pocket change. A lot, significantly less than they are now.
Imagine what you could buy with wind, solar, and batteries for $52 billion.
And by the way, the solar project we talked about last week in Saskatchewan, Canada, 2 years from proposal to operation.
That's even a bit longer than I would have expected, but obviously quicker than these ridiculous nuclear plants.
You have to consult with the community and do environmental assessments and reflectivity and birds and everything, just to make sure that it's okay. So the government officials have said that Sizewell could be eligible for financing under the UK's Regulated Asset Base, or RAB model, which enables companies building new facilities to be paid during the construction phase. Meaning energy customers, regular people, will have to pay for the project when construction begins, not 10 to 12 years from now when you get the benefits from it. Holy crap, would I be pissed off if I lived in the UK. Holy mackerel. So the ratepayers are sharing the risks of the delays and cost overruns, which always happen in nuclear reactors. Always, 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 always. Never not happen. And those overruns and delays cost, some places are 20 years instead of 8 years, like the huge delays. So it'll be majority owned by France Utility, EDF, and it'll be built in Suffolk, a fishing village about 110 miles northeast of London that has been home to nuclear power at the Sizewell site for more than 60 years, so they're accustomed to it there. The grid infrastructure is there to connect it, and the plant is expected to have 3.2 gigawatts of generation capacity, which is the equivalent of 3 typical nuclear reactors, according to officials who on July 20th announced their support for the project. The plant is expected to feature two 1,600 megawatt pressurized water reactors. And EDF will redesign the reactor to avoid a repeat of fuel rod failures that have led to a plant shutdown in China. This is more questions, because we haven't done a lot of nuclear building that, the people are dead who made the nuclear plants, all the nuclear plants, and now, new safety regulations. It's tough to do nuclear these days. So they presume it's going to prevent malfunctions from those rods. But France, of course, is the people who have very expensive electricity right now because half their nuclear plants are offline this summer.
And as we had to discuss last week, they're so worried about their electricity production, they're telling air-conditioned shops to close the doors because they're leaving the doors open with the air conditioning on. Okay, so I've got a report here from a New Scientist as well as Auto Evolution, and it's about a wind farm project off of Martha's Vineyard in the U.S. This is a very large wind project. It's 800 megawatts per year, so this is going to power about 400,000 homes and businesses in the area. Offshore wind, as we know, is becoming a big thing now all over the world, but starting to particularly take off in the United States. So they started building this wind farm, and they found unexploded ordnances, which are essentially military weapons that did not function as intended, meaning they were supposed to explode. I'm not sure what they were bombing off of Martha's Vineyard.
Maybe test pilots or something like that, or World War. They're still finding unexploded ordnance from World War II in Europe. Yeah. It's just amazing when you see a story like that from time to time.
Yeah, well, this is off of Martha's Vineyard. So they started building this wind farm, offshore wind, and they've now come across these unexploded ordnances. And so they're going to have to... Video starting now.
So last week we talked about a volcano potentially affecting a nuclear power plant in Japan, and now they're building wind and have to deal with explosives, which I assume are on the seabed, just have fallen to the seabed and have not exploded. Yeah, that's just a reminder, Brian, that war is hell, and we should not do war. Okay, war is bad.
Give me a second here. Okay, I've got a report here from New Scientist magazine as well as Auto Evolution, and it's about a wind farm project off the coast of Martha's Vineyard in the U.S. As we've talked about on the show recently, offshore wind power is really taking off around the world, but particularly in the U.S. So there's a very large project here that is being installed off of Martha's Vineyard in the U.S. This is a large-scale installation, 800 megawatts per year. So this should power about 400,000 homes and businesses in the area of Martha's Vineyard and obviously reduce carbon emissions. Equivalent, 400,000 homes and businesses, And should be equivalent to taking 320,000 cars off the road, which is a nice little thing. But anyway, so they were installing this project and they came across an unexpected problem. And I imagine installing things offshore is always difficult to begin with, but even more difficult when you come across unexploded ordnances, which are essentially, military weapons that were supposed to explode, but did not explode. I'm not sure what they were bombing off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, but yeah. Or, they were just, flying by in a bomber and they were just littering or something. Who knows? But in any case, so they've found these unexploded ordnances off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. These are military ammunition or explosive devices which did not function as intended. I guess either they found them that way or they found them by, digging up. I'm not sure. But, they got to take care of this before they can finish the wind farm project.